All right. Happy Wednesday, everybody. We are going to jump into another Rest is Resistance sort of webinar conversation, and we've been going section by section. So today we're going to be talking about dreaming. So as part of the overall structure of the book, and we'll give ourselves a little bit of time to daydream together as well. If you're listening to this on the recording, we encourage you who are here or listening thereafter to be in a comfortable space where you can pause for a little bit as we're going, as we'll be doing a little exercise during our time together. You may know me as the person who sends out emails about various opportunities, but I'm Jawan Zabaria Lumumba. I'm on the Multicultural Leadership Development team here at YUSA, and I'm your facilitator today because I love reading and have read this book many a times and want to share some of the highlights and learnings. But in order to do so, you need to learn a little bit about me outside of my job. And so we love to structure my introductions just around what our topic is, and we're talking about dreaming. So something that's fun to think about is the fact that we've been dreaming all of our lives. Even if we forget our dreams, dreams have been an essential part of who we are. And when we're little, like little, dreams are just sort of a natural part of who we are. But as we continue to grow and learn, a lot of times our dreams get a little bit more focused in on either jobs that we want to take over or achievements that are sort of imposed upon us, which aren't necessarily bad, but they are a little bit limiting and sometimes start to pull our dreams towards things like what will our work be, or how will I achieve this, and lean more into productivity instead of just dreaming. And sometimes it's an opportunity to make some dreams come reality, thinking about some things that you may dream up at work that you hope will be activated, which is all great, but all of that is underlined with productivity. And so something that we all endured was, of course, the shutdown when we ourselves had to pause and slow down. And although a lot of work was focused, a lot of energy was focused in on work, we also had a chance to pause and slow down to reconnect with ourselves and to start thinking about who we are outside of work and how we can start to really think about pausing for ourselves and creating new habits. And so for me, I know I started dreaming a little bit more and focusing in on things like reflecting on my dreams, like doing some journaling. Some things are able to help me connect more closely with myself away from work and productivity. And so that really allowed me to start thinking about what are my dreams beyond dreaming of labor, dreaming of work. And when I was reading Rest is Resistance, that was definitely something that popped up a lot. Thinking about productivity as not being the outcome of everything, but thinking about rest and dreaming as the outcome of what we should be doing just with our lives in general. So a quote from the book says that there's no system in our culture that supports and makes space for us to rest. Streaming creates energy, allows you to connect with your deepest ideas, and offers space just to be and to become free from grind culture and burnout culture. And so we really want you to think a little bit about the question of what is your relationship to dreaming and daydreaming, especially outside of work and brainstorming for work. And so with the five of us who are on right now, we are going to keep things sort of easy breezy in regards to dropping stuff into the chat or just hopping off mute. And so this is my introduction that sort of shares my relationship with dreaming. And I know that as someone who's a writer who does creative writing, I love to dream and I love to sort of imagine different things. But I know that not everybody always has the space to dream or to daydream. So we'd love to hear from at least one of you, or if you'd like to drop in the chat and hear a little bit about what your relationship is to dreaming. And pull a card from our beautiful rest deck that the creator of this book also gifted us with. And then we'll dive into dreaming and talking about sort of the fight to dream and the right to dream, sharing some techniques, creating a space to dream. We'll do a dream space exercise. And then we'll talk a little bit about some homework that you all can do about your schedules and thinking about how we schedule time for ourselves and what that has looked like, what that looks like for ourselves now, and what it can look like in the future. And then some resources that you all can share and utilize for yourself. So these are agreements. These are just ways for us to sort of remind ourselves that we're in a space that will be a little bit vulnerable. As we've already done, will pause the recording. So if you do have stuff to share, you don't have to worry about that being recorded. But we're going to hold this space and make sure that we're uplifting our four core values: caring, honesty, respect, responsibility, lean into active listening. If we are asking questions, making sure we're asking questions to understand, not to challenge perspectives. What's learned here leaves here, but what's shared here stays here. So we do want to offer that confidentiality, but we do want you to pick up some lessons from this. Challenge yourself to lean into some discomfort. Some of these may be questions that challenge some of our stories that we've told ourselves, some new ideas that we may not be ready to leap into, but challenge yourself to at least share and explore, even in that discomfort. Contribute to the collective space and make sure there's space for others to contribute. It's always okay to slow down. And I always try to make sure these aren't too over programmed, so I'm not rushing through them, but we want you to take your time and to reflect. And just a reminder that we'll always hear that rest is for yourself. It's not meant to be for productivity. So what I decided to do is bring out this little deck, which is the rest deck, and it has some reminders around rest. And so what I'm going to do is just shuffle these cards and wait for someone on the call with us to say stop, and then I will pull the card that's at the top of this deck, and we'll see what it says and how it resonates with our conversation that we have today around rest and dreaming. So whenever anyone is ready, just tell me to stop.
That was my stop emoji.
Oh, okay, perfect. So rest does not have to be earned. That's what this card says. And on the back of it, it says every time you pull this card, repeat this phrase at least 5 times. Rest does not have to be earned. 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 Whisper it silently, boldly proclaim it, write it over and over again. Place this card on your bathroom counter, in your office, next to your bed, over your heart. You don't have to earn rest, it is your birthright. So how did this affirmation challenge or expand your experience when it comes to resting or dreaming? I'll just put that into the, I'll put this into the chat in case you want to revisit it. And we'll keep going. So, Rest is Resistance is a book by Trisha Hersey, who came up with the programming around the nap ministry. And the tenets of the nap ministry are that rest is a form of resistance, that our bodies are a site of liberation. Naps provide a portal to imagine, invent, and heal, and that our dream space has been stolen and we want it back. And so we'll really be focusing in on that last component today. Within the book Rest is Resistance, there's 4 sections. The second section is Dream, and we will be diving into the dream space today. So we aren't going to go through all of these, but this is what we have touched on last month, which is that rest can look like many different things. And so a lot of times we just associate rest with sleep or napping, and resting can be a variety of things. But if you look at number 4, we have daydreaming by staring out of a window. You don't have to just be staring out of a window to daydream. A lot of times it's just about creating space to slow down. Sometimes even just close your eyes or take the visuals in that are around us right now. So we'll be doing a little bit of that today, but we just want to remind you that rest can look like many things. So when we talk about dreaming, a lot of times we talk about the dream space, and that is meant to really be shifting us out of the perspective that dreaming is limited to just when we're asleep, because we know a lot of people don't remember their dreams, which is fine. But we do oftentimes remember how we feel after we dream. And so even if we don't remember those exact dreams, we have the energy and sort of feelings that bubble up within us when we do dream. We also realize that as we rest and as we do these different acts to rest, be it napping, be it going on a walk, be it just taking a moment to meditate and to rest, A variety of these things are going to allow our mind space to become an open canvas, to be able to daydream and to create some pictures and to start to work some things out for ourselves. And so we know that this isn't limited to sleeping. We know this isn't limited to napping, but we oftentimes don't have access into our dream space anymore because we are oftentimes thinking about work. We are oftentimes thinking about what the next thing that we have to do is. We're almost too much into our urgency of the next thing that we have to do that we get further and further away from the canvas of our dreams. And we learn a lot from ourselves as we dream. And dreaming is almost a way that allows our mind, body, and spirit to speak to us in a way that allows our mind to be able to um, create, create. It allows our mind to be able to dream, allows our mind to imagine. And as we get further away from that, we get more focused just in on the productivity of things. So again, dreaming creates energy. It allows me to connect with my deepest ideas and offer space. Space to just be and to become free from the demands of a fast-moving, nonstop culture. That is, it's very important to be able to do that. So we start to think about what we operate in, either around grind culture or burnout culture, which is prevalent within nonprofits, but just in the world that we operate in. So to be able to pause and slow down allows us to be able to take a break from that culture. Dreaming is also metaphysical space. A key component of this is rest. So this is the preparation, the request, the alternative, the counter narrative, and the free fall in a space of burnout culture, which means that dreaming is our work and that resting is our goal. And so as we start to think about dreams a little bit more and the dream space that we create, we have to remember that this goes against a lot of what our culture, a lot of times within the United States, within work, is telling us to do. Our culture is telling us to be constantly on the go, and dreaming allows us to say, no, I need to stop, I need to rest, and allows our body to imagine and to dream in a way that we don't always get a chance to do. So as we think about fighting for our dreams, we have a right to dream. That means that there's a few things that we really want to consider. The first is that there are things to be learned from our dreams. And so we oftentimes prioritize like traditional learning, which is like not bad, but it's not the end all be all as it comes to how we can learn. So we learn a lot of times from books, from programs, from podcasts, which are all great. We learn from webinars like we're on right now. But there's also a lot to be learned from our bodies themselves and to be able to slow down to actually understand how we're feeling. So a lot of times we may push ourselves into exhaustion and then our bodies get sick. That's our body saying that like, hey, I need some rest. And unfortunately, we've surpassed that. And now we're going to have to take a mandatory few days off because we're not feeling well. When in reality, we probably heard our body giving us a few red flags to say, hey, maybe we don't need to stay up till 9 o'clock working on work stuff, and that we need to take a break. Maybe that we need to actually walk around on our 15-minute break. Maybe we need to have lunch that's not in front of the computer. Maybe we need to do some things that allow us to listen to our body. When we do yoga, a lot of times we do some pauses to sort of do a full body check and scan. And those actually tie very closely into somatic practices of listening to how you're feeling, how your mind's doing, how your imagination is doing. A lot of times our dreams also reflect things we're working on. Dreaming about work is a bummer, and we don't get paid to do that. And sometimes when we are doing that, we know that our stress from work is bleeding into the space that we should be having space to just dream and live. And so it's an opportunity to think about what are some of the lessons that our dreams are telling us, and how do we reflect on them ourselves. There's deprogramming and reprioritizing. So a lot of our life is focusing in on practicality and productivity. So again, more the check boxes of things we need to do for work, things we need to do for our family, which is important, but it's not always the end all be all that if we don't do these things, then everything will fall apart. It's sometimes an isolation too of I have to do this myself when we really need to lean into our community to say, hey, can you help here so I can take a break? So thinking about how we can sort of deprogram some of the practicality and productivity that we hyper prioritize and think about how we can be doing things more collectively, more with rest in mind, and how we can lean into and support one another. There's a power of slowing down. Again, we are moving at a machine pace in our workplace. And so sometimes we need to realize that it's not always healthy to be trying to churn out as much as we do. Sometimes we as supervisors need to really pause and think about how much I'm overloading some of my staff. And sometimes we have to think about how much am I doing that is then setting the example of this is not necessarily a good pace for us to be moving at. So thinking about what the value will be of slowing down, allowing people to not feel depleted, and that would also then sustain some opportunities to create space to pause, to rest, to dream, and thinking about how that can show up in our day to day. The disruption of exhaustion speaks to the fact that grind culture really is fueled by distractions, exhaustion, and the idea of productivity. And so all of these things are done to really make our productivity go faster and to not really think about things that would be benefiting ourselves. And so we think more about benefiting our organization or whatever the end goal is, and it disconnects us from ourselves, which then disconnects us from our ability to really be more centered with ourselves, to be able to dream and to think about how we're feeling, because we are mostly prioritizing labor. And then the last piece is tied to that, which is that there's been a theft of the dream space, an idea that our dreaming doesn't really matter, that daydreaming is laziness or should be guilt-ridden, and that further separates us from our ability to pause and slow down and to dream. And so, as we know that there's lessons to be learned from dreams, all these things that are pulling us away are pulling us away from the lessons that we could be hearing from ourselves that would allow us to be able to be more connected with who we are. In so doing, and the systems that we operate in, to rest is protests technically because we are breaking from the norm of the grand culture that we exist in. And so it's a beautiful interruption in a world without a pause button. But we can feel that guilt that rises as we try to rest or we try to daydream. We hear things like, I feel like I should be doing something else or something more. I feel worthless when I'm not checking things on my to-do list, and I feel lazy and unworthy if I have a day full of leisure. So I want to pause here and ask the question, what of these phrases sort of resonates with you, feels familiar, or what are other stories that we tell ourselves that distance us from our ability to dream? And to probably offer you all some questions to think about on this next one, but also start to move us into our dreamscape activity and be able to give you some techniques as well. So you can take a screenshot of these or you can reflect back on this later, but ask some questions to yourself that we may not always consider, which is who encourages us to dream and to rest? Like who in our lives really encourages us to slow down a little bit. Thinking about who's inspired or taught you how to dream as well. It's a question that we don't necessarily think about because we just instinctually dream. But as we think about daydreaming, as we think about ideating in a way that leans away from productivity, think about some of the authors or healers or ancestors, elders, public figures, even celebrities in some ways that may be teaching you or inspiring you to daydream and to really lean into your imagination. And then the question from the start of this was, when was the last time you decided to dream? You have that intentionality of setting time aside to rest and dream. So think about some of these questions, and definitely we want to explore some of these moving forward. So we have more questions about deprogramming, for curiosities for deprogramming. So some of these questions you may want to muddle on and again take a photo of so we can explore our exercise after this. But how do we dream about the future that we want to see? So much of the exhaustion and distractions limit our ability to dream forward. Sometimes we get stuck in the now, we get stuck in work, we get stuck with the ability to sort of envision a future that we want to be in. How do we simply tap into our dream flow? So that I can think about, again, how you're feeling from dreaming, what you're thinking about before you fall asleep, and starting to think about what that means and listening to some of the thoughts or feelings that arise. Who taught you the capacity to dream? Who are the sharpeners of your vision? When do you desire to daydream? When do your desires to daydream fade away? And again, a lot of that could be when we're feeling exhausted, distracted, or really pulled in all these different directions. Thinking about rituals or practices when you're falling asleep, and then how you connect with yourself when you wake up. When do you begin to confuse the idea of daydreaming as frivolous or as a waste of time? How can we begin to welcome ourselves into the dream space that's waiting for us to tap into it? And how can you begin to disconnect from the lies of grind culture, not rind culture? I don't know what that is. This probably has to do with fruit rinds. But how do you disconnect from the lies of grind culture and burnout culture and continue to tell us? So thinking about some of these will give you a chance to be more intentional of how you daydream. So these are the techniques for creating a space to dream. These techniques will be different for everybody, but we wanted to offer these to you as an option. Thinking about how you can lean into a community that feels authentic and vulnerable to you, that you trust. So that could be your partner, that could be your close friends, that could be colleagues at work who you want to be able to create more authenticity with, but really cultivating a deep community that allows you to be able to show up authentically and vulnerable. Invite a space of joy, freedom, and rest by laying down, by really taking some of that in, by really starting to ask yourself, am I just resting right now to recharge, to keep working, or am I inviting some of these like energies into my space as I rest? To give yourself space to wander at your own pace. You are not on a run. This is your own path to find. So you don't have to like close your eyes immediately and be like, I'm gonna imagine a giant image of X, Y, and Z. Really consider how you want to rest, how you want to dream, and move at that pace. We've talked about this already. Slow down. So rest by slowing down, rest in secret, rest in open, rest without your phone. Sometimes we use our phone to be able to connect with these moments, but we encourage you to sort of put your phone aside as you do rest. And then create sleep habits for better sleep hygiene. Consider journaling some of what you're feeling and dreaming about, and then rest as if your life depended on it. So these are just some techniques that you can use to approach dreaming a little bit differently with some of the intentionality that we don't always consider. But what we're gonna do now, and I'll throw on some music as we're doing this, but we're gonna do a quick daydreaming exercise. So we're gonna go for about 5 minutes, which is not a very long time, but it should be enough time for us to at least pause for a moment or two. I'm going to get my music up, but the idea is that we want to create space during this exercise to actually be able to um, rest a little bit, and then to see where our mind decides to take us. Again, we don't need to be addressing anything directly. We almost want to just rest and pause just to see how we're feeling and then what is on our mind right now. So, as we do this, we encourage you to remember that there's no wrong way to do this. We do want to try to release ourselves from some of the obligations that we normally are focusing on, such as work. Sometimes it's about our kiddos, our partners, things that we have to do, and lean more into how we are feeling for ourselves. So we're going to take a moment to pause, to take a deep breath in, and also to release. So just take a moment to pause, breathe in and release. I'm congested a little bit right now, so I apologize. I can't do the big breaths with you as much right now. But continue that flow of breathing and release from your mind aspects of work, aspects of productivity, and aspects of obligations as well. And as we do that, I'm going to get the music going. But we just want you to be able to pause. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go off camera. I'm going to give us 5 minutes to just dream, to daydream a little bit. You can get up, you can move, you can stay where you are seated, you keep your eyes open, closed, but just keep your mind open to see where our daydreams take us. All right, we're gonna pull ourselves back in the next 15 seconds. All right, let me stop the music. So that was 5 minutes. So it was not a very long moment to daydream and to pause and to reflect, but it does give us a moment to think about sort of where our mind begins to go as we pull away from some of the things like work, some of the things like productivity and obligation, and to just realize that this is a 45-minute moment that we've been sharing together, which has been phenomenal. And that we can find time if we need to be able to build in moments to dream and daydream. Before we close, I'm going to give you a little homework assignment for yourself before we close, but I want to ask, how was that? How was it to pause for just a moment to try to just allow yourself to dream and to daydream a bit? Not going to check in to see you do this, but it's an exercise that allows us to do some reflection ourselves. So oftentimes how we schedule ourselves highlights the lie that our worth is determined to how much we can accomplish constantly, and it's affirmed and rewarded when we push uh, our bodies, not our poor bodies, although sometimes it is our poor bodies, to the limit to do well. So we have to think about how we schedule ourselves, and sometimes we have to do so by actually looking at our schedule. So there is also a bit of history within our bodies of how we grew up. And if you have an ability to, I would challenge you to find some of your daily or weekly schedules from when you were younger. It could be back in grade school, sometime in your teens, in college, if you went to college in your early 20s, or even earlier in your career. Just think a little bit about what your daily schedules looked like and what your weekly schedules look like. So if you have an ability to either pull up a calendar or to be able to find something that captures that, I would challenge you to look at what your schedules used to look like and then to review what your current daily schedules look like and your weekly schedules look like. Some of us have different schedules on a day-to-day basis, but thinking about not just for work, but at home, socially, and thinking about how your time is prioritized. As we start to look at our schedules of our past and now, I would ask you to see, are there commonalities between your old schedules and your current schedules? How does rest or daydreaming even show up in your schedules? I know we all have breaks designated, but were we using those breaks to actually recharge ourselves just for work, or were we allowing ourselves space to dream? And then as you think about our future, what changes could you consider so that there could be space for rest and dreaming in your life based upon how we schedule things? That may be meaning that we have to pull some things out. It may mean that we need to rearrange and reapproach how we're doing some things. It may mean that we need to ask for some help in spaces where we feel like we aren't able to release anything. So, thinking about that, these are some exercises that we would love for you to explore as you think about your schedule as it relates to resting and dreaming. And as always, and these will go into uh, the link post. There are resources from Trisha Hersey, who leads the Nap Ministry. She has an Instagram account, some reflections, some ongoing resources that she has. There's always the book Rest is Resistance, and the music that was playing is from a playlist that I created. So you can always listen to that if you would like to. And then we always just have our closing invocation that we wrap up on, and it states, you are enough simply by being alive. Thank you for living. Thank you for resisting. Thank you for creating. Thank you for dreaming. Thank you for resting. We believe that our healing can visit us while we are napping, while we are resting, while we are sleeping, while we are slowing down. We believe that naps provide a dream and vision, an envisioning space to invent, to create, and to heal, to imagine. This is what resistance looks like. Won't you come? Won't you come with? This is a resistance. This is a protest. So we encourage you all to continue to rest. And that if you have any other questions, just let me know. But thank you for being here with us. Thank you for dreaming with us this afternoon. And we encourage you to take some of these ideas, to slow down and pause to sift through them, to see what resonates with you right now and what you want to take with you and activate for yourself. And we'll be back next month to dive into resist, the next part of the manifesto. So thank you, team.